Let's quickly overview the types of teas that we have. So, Liquid Planet is a very unique company where not only do we, of course, have coffee shops and restaurants, but we also have a division of the company that produces all of our own branded beverage items. We produce our own coffees, teas, chais, cocos, smoothie powders, and a number of different items that are Liquid Planet branded. So we're very proud of our line of teas. All Liquid Planet teas are organic. They're loose leaf, and they're just a phenomenal high quality tea. So when a customer orders a tea, one of the first things we really need to ask the customer is whether or not they want caffeine or not. That's one of the big, most determining things when a customer asks for tea. Obviously, if it's 8 at night and somebody wants a tea, a lot of times they won't want caffeine. So we need to make sure that we can steer them to the proper type. So first of all, tea across the board all comes from one plant in the world. Okay, so there's many things we call tea. We call herbal tea, but it's actually not tea. It's herbs, right? So tea itself comes from one plant. It's called the Camellia sinensis plant, and it's grown in a few places in the world, mainly China and in Africa. But tea basically always starts as green tea, and then that green tea is plucked at a certain time and harvested, and then it is processed a certain way to become some other type of tea. So the types of teas across the board are green tea. So we start with green tea. It's about 5 to 10% of caffeine. It is just minimal processed. Usually it's steam, maybe it's pan fried. It usually comes from China, and that's where tea starts. Then there is white tea. Okay, so white tea is pretty. It's not processed very much. It's basically an oxidized green tea and a certain type of tea. But there's white tea. So white tea is truly tea and has caffeine. Then there's oolong tea. Oolong is partially oxidized. It kind of falls between green and black tea. Definitely high caffeine content, and usually is just left out in the sun or left out to oxidize naturally. Black tea is the most processed tea. So that's a fully oxidized leaf. It has the most caffeine, and there's lots of different types of black teas. But absolutely all these teas come from one plant. They all have caffeine, and we do not carry decaffeinated tea. There is either caffeinated tea or naturally, uncaffeinated teas. On the other side of teas, from caffeinated, we have herbal teas, of course. We have lots of different types. Herbal teas are made from herbs and flowers and fruits and all that kind of stuff. They are not made from the Camellia sinensis plant, and they do not have any caffeine, of course. A lot of times, herbal tea is called a tisane. So that's just something a customer might ask for. Then there's rooibos tea. Rooibos tea is a red tea. It's always red. It comes from the South African red bush plant from South Africa. It's incredibly healthy. It's caffeine free, of course, and it's just a really good tea. Then we have mate. Mate is actually grown in South America. It's often called yerba mate. It comes from the yerba mate shrub or tree. It's very high in minerals. It's very high in vitamins. It has a lot of caffeine. It's very healthy for you. And it's a very particular tasting tea. So again, we call it a tea, even though it technically doesn't come from the same plant as like black tea, but it does have caffeine. And then the last one is matcha. So matcha is a green tea, and when green tea is grown in the world, there's basically 5 levels or 5 grades of green tea. Grade 1 of green tea is what you'd find in a pretty cheap, like Lipton tea bag. Grade 3 is what they called sencha. So the higher the grade of green tea, the higher the quality of the product. And grade 5, or the highest grade, is called matcha. Green tea is basically picked when it's young. It's ground very slowly into a very fine powder. And then that matcha then is used in traditional Japanese tea ceremonies. and we use it. We use a special version of matcha that's called beverage or ingredient matcha that is designed for use in beverages. So it definitely has some sugar in it, but it's basically a very fine powdery green tea that you mix with milk or water or whatever you'd like, and then you ingest the entire plant. You're ingesting the entire thing instead of steeping a leaf, in water. So matcha is a great product. It's incredibly expensive, but we definitely sell a lot of it. It's used in a couple of our beverages, and then people can order matcha to add into anything they like as well.